Welcome to the Keelhauled podcast. I'm your host, CaptainLogun, and we've got a lot of Sea of Thieves news to cover today. So tie yourselves to the mast and hold fast. Ahoy there, pirates. I hope you had yourselves a good week and a good weekend. I know I did. This week, we are going to be talking all about what is going on with Season 18, what is going on with those Ashen garrisons. There's a lot to talk about and a delay in what we're going to have in Act 3. All that and more in this week's episode of Keelhauled Podcast. But before we go into any of that, I have to thank the patrons. They are the ones that went over to patreon.com/Keelhauled podcast to support this content and more. If you guys like this, please consider doing it, as it does help take care of the bills. And I'm actually going to be planning a trip with my co-host over at Xbox Expansion Pass to go to Summer Games Fest, which is the general time in June when all of the companies come together to showcase what's basically going to be going on for the last half of the year. As such, Xbox typically has something going on around that time, and as always, Sea of Thieves always is kind of present in that. So I'll be curious to see what's going on with that, but I'll definitely be bringing back news of anything that might look interesting regarding Summer Games Fest, and Patreon helps with that in part, as all of those funds tend to go to content creation for Keelhauled, as well as like if I need to make a trip down to LA for the weekend. So as always, I like to thank the patrons by calling them out by name. And this week we're going to start off, as always, with A-Chick. So thank you to A-Chick, L Cute, Balls, Blue Turtle V1, Captain Chonky, Captain Longsharts, Chateau Neuf, Super Pack, Zombie Killer, Cosmic Johnson, Static Mirror, Crazy Frog, Davram TV, El Jefe Esteban, Godhammer 6, Jeff H, Carl Embo of Embo Family Gaming, Kylia the Aficionado, Elvin Vramir, Evil Morpheus, Space Admiral Ors, Xbox Mike 29, Rabid Raccoon, Blue Crab, Reap's Revenge, Registella the Brony Pirate, Ribloid, Rustbelt Kid, Sea Leg Sam, Shoe Daddy 13, Scumelt 666, Tales of the Sea, The Demon Jester, Tommy D, TN Professor, Wailing Witch, Wild Hog Murph, Big Bad Pad, Mina Fairy, Hegger Owl, Captain Duckweed, Evil Martha, Peter Miller, Rooski Doo, Thor Von Blitz, Luke Lore, the Insipid Ghost, and wow. Thank you all so much for your love, for your support. Appreciate it as always. And with that, let's get into it. First on today's docket, it's been an interesting week in news as far as Sea of Thieves goes. We have some delays, believe it or not. We're actually going to be having a bit of a delay. Now, the interesting thing about this is that the season 18 Act 3 is not being delayed and then pushing other content. What's actually happening is that what was going to launch on the 19th, which was Act 3, the beginning of the Ashen garrisons, and a Golden Glory weekend, that is being delayed until March 5th. Now, this is not going to have any impact on Season 19, but it is still going to impact how much time you have to be able to get the rewards done for Act 3, to get those livery sets. It's something that needed to happen, but it's not something I wanted to have happen. Going back to last week's episode, while we were talking about the inside or the insiders content for Ashen Garrisons, I had a really good time running around with them. I think that they're very beautiful looking. I think that it's nice that there's some intrinsic detail towards how you proceed to actually open up the doors and stuff. The problem is that these garrisons are just not ready for launch. And to be perfectly frank, I'm glad that Rare decided to pull the ripcord on this one. They are going to be pushing it back. The pushback that they are having for this is going to give them a couple extra weeks, which in most development studios, that's about a one sprint to be able to develop for the week and then test for the actual launch. And then hopefully come 5th of March, they'll actually be able to have a lot of the issues that they know about in the code so that they can launch it and actually have it work. Some of the issues that we were having were duplicate loot. We were having trouble finding ashen keys. We were having trouble finding loot at all. Rowboats were not working. Rowboats were flying. There was just a lot of issues in the insider build that was clear that this was not polished, that they were still running into major issues with collision and spawn rates, the type of loot that's going to be in there. All of that was all issues that I've run into, and I've talked to and read the comments in the forums about everything that's been going on with this Act 3. So when I saw the news and Drew had put out a post over on Reddit, or not Reddit, I'm sorry. I always think of Reddit as like the go-to forum. Drew put out a post on the forum. So let's take a look and read through this. He says, "Hey everyone, as we, Rare, approach our final act of Season 18 and introduction of the new Ashen garrisons into the Devil's Roar, Rare has been assessing their progress, and it's clear that they're not currently on track to hit the February dates that they are aiming for. Ashen garrisons are an exciting new addition to the Devil's Roar as heavily fortified structures defended by Flameheart's forces that require smarts of an experienced crew to take on. The internal play testing during the development cycle made it clear that these new structures did not feel unique compared to sea forts in other regions, and while visually stunning, lack meaningful gameplay across the ramparts, resulting in this encounter feeling underwhelming." I would actually say that is fairly accurate. Given what I've played, I will say that these are cool, but they are no different than any other sea fort that I've done, just a little bit longer and a little more complex. So going back to the post here, Drew says, "The team made significant changes to the experience to make taking on these garrisons feel unique. However, those additions have resulted in less time in insiders that we had planned for. After releasing these into players' hands last week, it was clear that we've got a little more work to do before we can bring these encounters up to the quality bar to be that they can be proud of." So I'm going to say yes. Apparently when they had done this, they had done the internal testing prior to some of the changes. Now, the changes that I'm going to say are probably going to be the means of entering into the fort that you can't just like run in. Like with sea forts, there's no doors, there's nothing locked up except for the storeroom and the actual vault itself. There's a couple gates and a portcullis, but for all intents and purposes, everything's open. The last time we had an opportunity to attack a sea fort where it wasn't this case was actually in last season's Act 2 time-limited event when we went to Royal Crest Fortress, and we had the keys that we had to use to open up the different doors to be able to get to the different paintings to find the one that we needed, so we could take that one painting and one extra one, turn it into the smugglers, and complete all of the time-limited deeds during that Act 2 for Season 17. So looking at what they've done, I'm glad that they decided to add some different things to these. It still feels very much like a sea fort, but I will reserve final judgment for when we actually see the finished product, or as finished of a product in Act 3 as we can on March 5th, which is 2 weeks from this coming Thursday. It's something that I want them to do well. Just because I think that they've put a lot of effort into designing these, and that effort is nice to see because it's something that's completely fresh to the game. Not so much in the sense that we've never seen anything like this before. Clearly, we have sea forts. These are just a little bit more robust. But I do like the way that they've designed them. I think it's something that I would have liked to have seen even with the sea forts, even with something like Port Merrick. But Port Merrick being a very open and welcome establishment as far as the structure of the island and the design and the intent behind it, it makes sense that having like a barrier wall with portcullises that you have to row into, probably not the best way to welcome new pirates into the Sea of Thieves. So I understand that. Going back to the post here, it says insiders will see us return to previewing upcoming features alongside Ashen Garrisons across the next weeks before we then stabilize the build for Act 3's update. And I hope that's the case. We've already seen one video come out that is going to talk about some of those. And we have some Hourglass news as well to talk about. But getting back to the post, this late arrival of Act 3 is not expected to affect our current timeline for Season 19's launch later in March. However, it clearly will result in a much shorter closing act for Season 18. Players looking to complete this season's deeds should be aware of this reduced time and plan accordingly. I'm going to be real honest and say that this is one of those opportunities for Rare to maybe rethink the time limited nature of some of this content. Granted, like Ashen Garrisons are going to be coming into the game, and they're going to be permanent fixtures in the game and add that availability to the Devil's Roar as far as something to do. They're even going to be dives, which, if we're being real honest and everyone's listening, there are dive voyages right now that do not work. I tried to get some dives to the ghost fleets for Order of Souls in the Roar. There's an Ashen version of that. Tried to dive to it. And, oh no, was it a dive? I think it was a sail to. I think it was either a sail to or a dive. Now I'll have to go back and test. I'll have to go do some testing on that one. But it didn't show the island, and it didn't populate the ships anywhere in the Devil's Roar. And it was like, okay, well, that's fine. One error we can forgive. Let us go cancel that voyage and drop another one. And then we will be on our way to the island that does not show me on the map. Why isn't it showing me on the map? Okay, that's fine. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. We'll try a third. Third time's a charm, right? Put down the third voyage. No, there's no island. There's no island. Where do we go? I don't know. So that's a fun one. But yes, so going to this being a raid voyage, it's going to be a permanent fixture. The issue that I have, the thing that I want to address, goes back to this time limited nature of content that Rare has for Sea of Thieves. Having these monthly cadence drops of content within a season is nice in a way to kind of break up the season so that there's a little bit of something to get to look forward to throughout the season, as opposed to it just being all at the beginning of the season and then getting it done in the first few weeks or the first month or the first month and a half, and then not really having anything to look forward to for the last half or the last quarter third of that season. Whether or not that speaks to the player base or the design of the content is arguable at best. So you could say that people are going through it too quickly. You could say that the game is not developing content that's enjoyable to replay throughout an entire season. Doesn't matter how you want to cut it. There is obviously an issue that they are addressing in the sense that they want to manage their development cycle, but also have something throughout the season. Understandable. I get it. It's totally fine. You can do that with events. I think you can do that with events. I don't think you want to do that necessarily with your seasonal content. If you want the seasonal content to be enjoyable and whatnot, I think it would have been fun to have not only the Eternal Guards kick up in the Devil's Roar, but also have the Ashen Garrisons start to show up in Act 1. And I think this is one of the things that I kind of miss about old Rare. Old Rare would have had these Ashen Garrisons slowly being built up. The last time we saw something that was actually being built up in Sea of Thieves, I would argue is probably tied to skeleton camps are kind of in that sense. But the last time we saw like a major rebuild of something was actually probably Port Merrick, if I'm being honest. The last time anyone cared about things changing in the world, was either the shipwreck on Shipwreck Bay, Flameheart's ship that was being built over there that just suddenly disappeared and turned into the Burning Blade. Not even going to get into that, if that's what it was or if that's what they intended it to be. I don't even know if anyone made that correlation that was paying attention to the game outside of the lore hounds, who probably will correct me on something that I said wrong at some point in this little stint. But Port Merrick, last time we saw something in my mind that most people could probably point to and say, yes, I recall when they were building those up. Skeleton camps, kind of in that vein. But I mean, those just kind of came up out of nowhere, but they still look like they're being built. Same thing with the current banished Guardian vaults. Those look like they are recently unearthed, which is nice. It shows that it wasn't just like a polished thing that appeared instantly after like one day. So I appreciate that. But to look at the Ashen Garrisons, why did Rare not take the opportunity to slowly build up to Act 3? We could have started to see this being built up in different stages. Now, that's a lot of development time, obviously, for them to be doing this. But if they knew that they were going to be doing Ashen Garrisons, much like they knew how they were going to design Port Merrick, it would have been cool. And I'm not saying that this is necessary, but it would have been cool if we had started to see hints and teases of structures being built up in the Devil's Roar well before Act 18, or not even 8, not Act 18, Season 18, in Season 17. It would have been nice to have, like, you know, even if it was something as benign as Duke, the Dark Lord, telling us about how he's heard whispers and he's sending out smugglers to the Roar soon to go take a look and keep an eye on the emplacements that are being built up in the Roar. And you go sail out there and you could take a look and be like, oh yeah, that's the Garrisons. That's what I think of when Rare was doing their best work. And I don't think that we've seen that for a while. It feels very much from like a consumer's perspective of someone that follows the game, that everything is coming in so gosh darn hot that if this were a plane trying to land on an aircraft carrier, it would have been half a mile past where the actual landing strip was. It would have been in the ocean, and everyone would have been like, wow, you guys didn't plan that as well as you maybe thought you did. And that's fine. But that's the trouble when you are developing so close to the actual deadline. And I don't know what the teams are doing over there. If we've got teams that are currently building content for Season 19, and we have teams that are, because back in the day, and we've heard this recently, we've heard recently that they have teams that are working on content for future seasons. And they have ideas and plans on what's going to happen in Season 19 and 20, and probably even 21 now that Season 17 is over with, because they typically work about a quarter ahead. So it's one of those situations where I am curious why these, after this many years, are still coming in so close to the gun with the content, to the point where we are still expecting, when it is not looking good in insiders, if enough people speak up about this, that we are going to see a delay. It still boggles my mind. And we've seen Rare do better. And I don't know if this is because of cost reductions, because the game's getting long in the tooth and maybe they're looking to push people over to different projects or testing out different projects. Maybe Microsoft has some sway in this and saying, hey, you guys might want to start thinking about custom servers and winding down and starting to look at new projects. I don't know what is going on internally, but it bears mentioning that Everwild is done. There's no more Everwild. So what are those devs doing? They just built a giant barn on the property to be able to expand the actual dev team. Now, what they're doing with that space, I don't know. They know, we don't know. But they got to be doing something with it. And if it is that tangentially related to Sea of Thieves? So I don't necessarily know what's going on, but I can definitely tell you what I see is the same issues, the same problems that we've had in the past with the game that have not been succinctly pointed out as we figured out what the issue was then. that will not affect our development now? And that is the underlying question I think a lot of us have. Why is now going to be different than what we've seen in the past? Because of the now 2 seasons in this design that we've seen, where they want to delay content for each act. I like the design, but it is clear that the content that should be ready for Act 3 is not ready. When, in my mind, if I'm trying to plan ahead for this, if I'm trying to ensure that the content is good and ready to go and locked in, that your QA is testing it, but they are working on testing it in Act 1, and that it should be released to insiders in Act 1. That way, you have 2 months to iterate, to take feedback, to QA, and then actually harden the build so that you can then launch in 2 months with and this is all with the caveat that I don't know what's going on in the studio. I don't develop games. I only understand how much time most studios plan as far as the type of content that they're making. The content that we're getting is lighter than we've seen in the past. So why is it that we've seen more content from them in the past that was seemingly more complex than what we are currently being offered, in the sense that the resources should be the same, if not more, than what they have been in the past? And if they aren't, that might be a good thing to mention. Now, going back to one of the main issues with the kind of start of this little stint here was the adherence to time-limited content. I think we really need to address, if we are going to be doing time-limited content and you're going to cut out some of the time that is available, maybe let's take a look at the requirements to get that done. Because if this is something like, for example, if this was Act 2 and it had been cut out of 2 weeks of time to be able to complete, I think this would be a lot more dire of a situation. Whereas currently, I don't know that anyone is flustered or maybe even not prepared for what's going on or what's going to happen when it comes to having to complete the content that's going to be coming with Act 3. I don't know how that's going to act, because in Act 2, we had to do quite a few hoops to be able to get the cosmetics. And there were quite a few cosmetics in that 1 month to be able to get. Whereas with this Act 3, we only have the 1 sales, but we have 2 locations, both in the Roar, and they're going to be contested for a while people work towards actually getting those deeds completed in the now only 2 weeks before the launch of Season 19. So I don't know if they've taken that into account, if they've just said, it is what it is, we can't really do anything about it, apologies for this being the way it's going to be. I don't know if that's what they're thinking, but it doesn't feel great to know that there's going to be an artificial timer. Well, not even artificial. It is an actual timer that's going to be ticking as soon as this update goes live, that folks that want to get cosmetics and pride themselves on getting cosmetics are going to have to go in with the knowledge that they're going to have 2 less weeks to be able to get this done. And that is, for all intents and purposes, hoping we are still hoping that the content that actually goes live is going to work, because that is still not an issue that is off the table. We are still looking at the possibility that the 2 weeks that they are taking to work on the Ashen Garrisons, to take into account the errors or the bugs that are currently plaguing it on insiders, it's still something that by the time we get done with this, we could still run into an issue where you're going to still have a very buggy launch, and that's kind of rough. The game right now still says that it starts in 4 days. But if you guys want to know what you have to do to be able to get those cosmetics, you have to complete the deeds for Act 3, which is the Ashen Garrisons. You have to unlock the entrance to an Ashen Garrison. You have to sell any lighthouse log to the Reaper's Bones. You have to defeat a Garrison Keymaster at the Ashen Garrison. You have to defeat a Custodian of the Treasury at an Ashen Garrison. You have to unlock a locked compartment in the Ashen Garrison's treasury. You have to unlock the storeroom of an Ashen Garrison, unlock the office of an Ashen Garrison, place treasure on a Reaper Bones rowboat at an Ashen Garrison, and then complete an emergent Ashen Garrison, and then complete an Ashen Garrison raid voyage. Now, looking at the requirements, there are a lot. What I will say is that they are very easy. As long as you go into it knowing that you're going to probably deal with some contesting, the likelihood of you being able to get these done should be pretty high. You should be able to get these done. Finding one emergently and doing a dive to one, I would say start off with doing a dive to one and then working your way through it. Whether you pick a particular faction or not, just know that it's going to have a mix of different rewards compared to the emergent one, which is going to have a lot of things. You won't necessarily need to sell anything in particular except for that lighthouse log. So even if you can't necessarily get all of the treasure, as long as you go through the process of doing one of the garrisons, or two garrisons, technically two have to be done, then you have pretty much guaranteed to get the Ashen Garrison sales. So this is doable. It is not the end of the world. But I would say that if I were rare and I was cutting out 2 weeks, half of the time available to be able to do this, I might want to take a look at the deeds and put a requirement on these that says out of the, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Out of the 10 of these, I would say only make 5 necessary to be able to get the Ashen Garrison sales. That way, at least you'll be able to ensure that it's easier to get the sales, given that you're getting half of the time. And again, I genuinely think that it is an easy thing for you to be able to get this done. The biggest issue is genuinely going to come down to just having to deal with other people. Once you have other people in the mix, that is when you're going to run into the issue of how easy is this going to be done. So I don't know if this is something that can be done on Safer Seas. I will have to test that. If that's something that can be done in Safer Seas, if you're very concerned about missing out on the cosmetic for for Act 3, then I would say go check out Safer Seas. If that is if time is more precious and less available to you during Act 3, I would say at the beginning of March, take a look and see if any of this can be done in Safer Seas to make it easier for you, literally easier for you to get this done. Going back to the forum post, Drew goes on to say that their next developer update is scheduled for this coming week, where he'll dig into what we're taking. Let's see. No, let me read this again. Where I'll dig into what we're taking from this recent delay and the broader challenges we're facing with our seasonal updates, which is going to result in some changes to content we're now planning to deliver in Season 19. Thank you all for the support and feedback so far, and thanks for your continued patience as we get this experience up to quality. Basically, they're saying because they are running into delays with Act 3, while they aren't necessarily delaying 19 or Season 19, it is going to impact what is actually coming in Season 19. Which at this point, we don't necessarily know what is going to be coming in Season 19, albeit the, I think there's the Kraken stuff, the revamp to the Kraken, which if I was to guess, that's getting pushed. If I had to guess, that is probably going to get pushed out. I don't know what's coming in Act 1 of Season 19. I know Act 2 is going to be the Battle Royale, or the last ship standing that is going to come there. But I think Act 3 was designated as the content that they plan to go back to iterate on, that is older, that needs a polish. I would say that would have been the Kraken content update, and that will probably get pushed if that's the case. If the delay is causing the teams to not be able to continue moving into the next content round, if Act 3 team is delayed, then that means that the content for Act 3 Season 19 will also get delayed. You can't just make time out of nowhere. Development time is still something you have to factor in. So I don't know what their dev cycle is, but if that's the case, that is wild that they are trying to make content on a monthly cadence that works. But I on a 3-month cadence that works. I don't know how that works in my mind, but I'm not gonna. I don't know any more details on that. So overall, yeah, I'll just say that I'm glad they're doing this. They needed to do it for the quality that players would run into if they hadn't delayed it. It sucks that they are going to be killing 2 weeks of Act 3 to keep the schedule on track for Season 19. And the cynic in me says that that's because there's cosmetics that have to come in the Emporium. There's cosmetics that have to get bought in the season pass. And if they run into the situation where they continue to delay a season, then they have done no better than they've done in the past. And that is something that I think matters more to them, that they stay on the 3-month cadence than just getting the content out when it's ready. And I think the cynic in me looks at the fact that every content update has new Emporium content, and that content doesn't seem to ever have issue coming out. That content, for whatever reason, I don't know who's working on the cosmetics team, but they seem to continue making very stellar cosmetics that consistently come out on time every time there's an Emporium update scheduled, and everything else is much more difficult. Everything else is much more complex. So looking at this, I'll say good on the team for recognizing the issues were a lot bigger than just the occasional like bug. I am still running into bugs that they have fixed. I think the current one that's been plaguing me has been not being able to use ladders, and that's any ladder too. That's a fun one, especially if you're at a sea fort and you can't get back onto your ship and you can't get back onto the sea fort. You have to wait for a shark or something. If you don't have any way to like blunder bomb yourself in the face, you just have to wait for the world to throw an enemy at you so that you can die. There's no way you can't send yourself to the ferry without something like a blunder bomb, which is very painful and consistently reminds me why I appreciate having a grapple gun on me a lot of the time. But yeah, it's good that they're doing this. I would hate for people to run into the bugs that I ran into with Insiders on live when they had not been properly prepared for the state of how garrisons are currently in Insiders. And I look forward to testing these when they bring up the new patch that will hopefully take care of a lot of the issues. I'm hoping it's going to be a lot more polished by the time we see this again in Insiders, which is hopefully this week. Hopefully we'll get word that the garrisons will have an update this week for Insiders, considering there's, this would be the week to test, give feedback, develop, and then have next week as like the internal testing and then the hardening for the actual release. All right, with the bad news out of the way, let's talk about some good news. Okay. I wanted to bring up the fact that we are still going to be getting a Golden Glory weekend This is going to be kicking off from February 27th up to March 2nd, which will then only give us 3 days before the Act 3, which means that you guys have a real opportunity to kind of work on some of the stuff that normally would be relegated to the end of the month and into the next month. But this being Golden Glory that crosses over the ledger timeframe, means that you're going to be able to get the bonus on the end of your ledger for February, and then kick it off fairly well with the 1st and the 2nd into March. So hopefully that will be something that everyone has, a good opportunity to kind of get some stuff if you want to make some money. I was kind of curious if this was going to stick around and actually stay. So it does look like that's the case. And I appreciate that they are going to continue keeping the time frame for Golden Glory and not try and bump that as to kind of remove some of the enjoyment of that. What that means is that if you still have your Act 2 deeds to do, Golden Glory Weekend is going to give you that opportunity to get a lot of money from that Molten Sands Fortress event, with the bonus to reputation and gold while turning things in while you're in the Devil's Roar. You will also be able to make that additional Golden Glory bonus with anything you turn in between the 27th and the 2nd. So keep an eye out for that. One of the other things that is going to be happening is that last weekend, February, again, there's going to be that Game Blast 26, where you can kind of help donate for charity to be able to get some of the Obsidian cosmetics. Namely, if you spend at the highest tier for the donation, you'll be able to get those Obsidian curtains that have, I believe it's the curtains that have not been released yet. This was the first time that we've had the opportunity to get these for your galleon. The drapes, I believe, are available for all ship types, but the curtains have yet to be released for that Obsidian set. That would complete your actual Obsidian set as far as the ship cosmetics go. If you have everything else, it has all been released in some form or another in the past. There is that Emporium sale that's going to be kicking off on the 20th through the 25th. So just keep an eye out for anything that you might want to be spending your money on, since it's going to be on sale. But again, as always, vote with your wallet. If you feel like the content is not serving you well, the best thing to do is to show that in the form of letting Rare know that you are not going to be putting any more money into the Emporium until content starts to improve. What's the the beatings continue until morale improves is the saying. But it was nice. And shout out to Rare. You didn't have to do this. And I didn't know it was going to happen. But in the email that they send out, the news on the seas, I actually got the 400th episode with shout out in the email. And I really appreciate that. That was very kind of you. It said the Persistent Podcasts. In case you missed it, the Sea of Thieves focused Keelhauled podcast hit a major milestone recently. Its 400th episode. A thunderous round of applause to CaptainLogun for his dedication, and long may Keelhauled's streak continue. We are now episode 405, which is going strong. We're going to keep going and definitely until the game either dies or I die or something else happens. And all I will say is that always I want the best for this game. I want the best for the community. And I think that Rare has been doing a good job of listening to the community and hearing our feedback, and that they are looking to do that. I know there's a lot of stuff in this game that we want. We're still asking for loadouts. We're still asking for new zones. We're still asking for Xbox One to get dropped. There's a lot of asks, and Rare's working on it. And I'm sure that they want to get it out as fast as they can. But I will happily take content that is engaging with a narrative that brings players to enjoy themselves while playing the game in an instance where I don't have to think about bugs or cheaters. I can just enjoy the game. There's games that I play that are like that. There's games that I heartily enjoy where I don't question if something that happened because it was a bug or because something was weird, like a cheater or something like that. So I hope we get to that point. That would be nice. That would be the thing that I would ask. But thank you to Rare. Thank you to the team that puts the emails together for adding the Keelhauled podcast to the email. It was really kind of surprising to see the thumbnail on the email when I opened it up and I scrolled down. I was like, oh, that's familiar. Why is that? That's me. That's me. Okay, we're doing the 400. Oh, I woke up the cat. Here we go. I'll be right back. I have to go take care of Fern. All right, the baby has been taken care of. Let's get back into the next topic. She's gonna meow for a little bit, I think, but I think that's because I just put her down. There's been some news regarding the Hourglass changes, and the one thing that I wanted to kind of jump out and say was that we got a heads up that there's actually going to be a new kind of stress test coming to Sea of Thieves with regard to the actual like last ship standing, which is kind of cool. I'm glad that they are doing this, because I think that many of us were kind of wondering, like, how is this going to go? I don't know if anyone's actually had an opportunity to really check this out in the game. And after a very heated couple of posts on Twitter kind of asking WTF Rare when we found out about the delay, it was like hours later that we got a post that let us know that the new 6 sloop last ship standing mode that's going to be in the Sea of the Damned is going to be available to try in Insider's build next week, or this coming week. So February 18th from 8 p.m. UTC to 10 p.m. UTC, it is going to be available for people who have the free time to be able to test out this mode. So some details on this new mode. It is going to be available for solo and duos, just as a heads up there. It is going to be 8 p.m. UTC, which if you're in America, if you're on the East Coast, that would be 5 hours earlier. So that would be 3 p.m. on the 18th, going till the 20th. Yeah, just on the 18th. That's right. They're only doing it one day, as far as I know. Actually, I'm going to go to the actual Insider thing and take a look, because I'm pretty sure that they said that it was only going to be, I got to check my rewards now that I'm on the page. This is what happens when you're working on that. Okay, I'm up on the bucket. The bucket's next. I got to get the bucket. I just got the hat. All right. Make sure you're doing that, by the way. If you guys haven't, go into Insiders, do your week. Please go do a skeleton camp, get the 20K, or go test out the new garrisons. Please go get your Insider stuff done. But yeah, that is going to be on February 18th from 8 p.m. UTC, 3 p.m. Eastern time, noon for West Coast, which means that for Central, what is that going to be? For Central, that's going to be 2 p.m. And then Mountain time, it's going to be 1. Or no, I think Mountain's on the same time as Pacific right now, at least until spring. So it'll be interesting to see how this goes. It's honestly, I don't think this is going to bring back Arena. I don't think that bringing back Arena will necessarily fix anything, because I think that for all intents and purposes, Arena was good, but it was not supported in the way that it could have been, with additional rewards as well as increased levels, and new modes and mixed ship modes. There was a lot of ground to run on with Arena that never came to fruition. And unfortunately, I think it's one of those things where we're probably not ever going to see Arena in that way again. With this being a mode that is purely just for a time limited basis, that's going to be wrapped up into the time limited events that they're kind of releasing with these new seasonal updates. I'm kind of hoping that they see the feedback, it does well, and they just add this as an opportunity to do as Hourglass. Like, I think it would be fantastic if you wanted to do your Hourglass battles as this mode, and when you go into the mode, you just kind of decide who you're going to fight for, whether it be for the Athena's Fortune or the Reapers. You pick your team and you go into the Sea of the Damned, and the last ship standing is the winner. All of the all of the people that competed got access to some sort of reputation, some sort of thing, but they had the opportunity to like gain some sort of like Hourglass levels in this mode as well too, because effectively this mode is just a way of like training to help take out the opposing faction, or at least that's what they tell me when you're fighting the same side. Is it's just a scrim, but someone has to sink, so that would be nice. But I think it should be something that should be more persistent and something that you can actually opt into, as opposed to just a time limited thing. Now I get it, like you make it time limited because people jump into it when they have the opportunity, when it comes around, and there's that kind of FOMO that's built in. But I already feel like we have too much FOMO in Sea of Thieves as it is. It would be nice if there was just access to content when players want content, as opposed to having to wait for specific events that don't happen every season, if that makes sense. Looking at the video that John McMurtry, who shout out to John, you look like you lost some weight there, buddy. Nice job. Looking at the way this looks, it's kind of interesting because they say that we're going to the Sea of the Damned, but the video that I'm looking at does not look like the green Sea of the Damned that I'm used to, which, if I'm being perfectly honest, would be very nice, because I don't think that many people really enjoy the wilds because of the kind of gloom of that kind of green overtone. I think that's why a lot of people enjoy being in the wild, or not the wilds, the Ancient Isles or the Shores of Plenty, especially the Shores of Plenty. I think everyone agrees the Shores of Plenty is the pristine, beautiful area to really kind of sail around in. And looking at the video that they're kind of showing of like the internal showcase or internal playtests of these, there's no green. Now, clearly there's some day and night cycles on this, but I'm kind of hopeful, because I mean, I can still see like some of the Sea of the Damned towers, like the lighthouses that they have there. And if they have like a day-night cycle with this, and you can just dive into the Sea of the Damned, it looks like the Shores of Plenty and it's not green. I'm kind of here for that. Because it would be nice for once to go to the Sea of the Damned outside of a tall tale and actually be in an area that looks more normal, in the way that I think like the Sea of Tribute would be for like when the ancients left, since they went to a paradise, right? So that I'm glad that was in reading the comments. The first one that pops out comes from Captain Falcor. Shout out to Falcor. He's been working on content, man. He's still putting it out there. He says he's glad that the feedback was listened to and that they're not going to be sailing around in the green gas of the Sea of the Damned, which, if that was the case, I'm glad. Because I was not aware that they had an opportunity to test this, if they have, because I was under the impression that this has not come to Arena or to come to Insiders yet. So with that, there's been some changes to Hourglass that are actually coming into the game, and I want to talk about those because they were showing up on the forums as well too. All right, next on today's docket, let's talk about the upcoming Hourglass changes. There's no timeline that I've seen that is kind of told us like when these are going to go into place, but Shelly Preston, who's been with the company forever and has worked her way up from testing all the way up to straight up just good designer for stuff. She's the one that we can thank for the overhealth little circle, the little meat ring. So that was what she was able to do for the game, just on like a tiny level. But love Shelly and Andy. And with this, she actually went into some of the most frequently asked questions regarding the upcoming Hourglass changes. So I wanted to give some of this feedback because it's buried in the forums. And if you guys aren't on the forums on a regular basis, you may not be keeping up with this information. So it's good to at least get their kind of frequently asked stuff out for everyone to kind of get an idea of what the philosophy is for this. I believe we talked about some of the philosophy behind like why certain things are costing or have more gold but less reputation, as far as like their loot distribution and the time and effort required around that. So that was a fantastic post that she put out that we talked about. I believe we talked about. If we didn't, and I've just been talking about this and this wasn't something that I talked about in a previous episode, please let me know. But be sure that you know for sure, because my memory's bad. Your memory shouldn't be bad. Okay. But getting into the Hourglass updates, I'm going to go through the questions and then their answers around that. So starting off, the first question that they addressed was, why does the zone shrink to its center and not between the two ships? So the answer was, the zone shrinks to its center to guarantee a final battle zone that is clear water and not covered by any land or too many sea rocks, for example. If an island were between the two ships, it would not be able to shrink around it, and then the rules would become unpredictable and may favor one ship over the other, resulting in an unfair fight. Secondly, it also means that everyone has a fair knowledge of where the battle will end and can plan/play strategically around that. Having no islands in the final zone means that ships cannot purposefully beach themselves on islands to remain to claim a victory that they did not earn. Which I think is a really good answer. I think it makes sense. I think I would rather have the center of the zone be something that is the predictable area, so that you can kind of take that variable. Yeah, take that variable out of the equation. Next question was, why doesn't the zone move around or pick a random location? And their answer was, if the position was always being randomized, we felt it would tip the balance too much into positional management, where players would need to be studying the map constantly to not get caught out. Whereas a predictable movement allows you to focus on the battle. The aim of adding the shrinking zone is to draw you and your opponent closer together to bring the battle to a close, not to add an element of randomized positional play. Gotta agree with that one. Will I be able to see the battleground or battle bounds, like the bounding area, in the world? They said, we are working on changes to allow the battle bounds, which is great alliteration, terrible to try and say, to visualize or to be visualized, making it easier and more dynamic to manage the battle zone during a match. I'll toss it out there right now. We have ways to indicate the zone with when we're going to like a shrine. If they can work on something that does that, that would be good. There's also, if you guys go to sea forts, there's always a little like green hue at the base of the sea fort where it meets the water. If they were able to do that, but have it be red or some vibrant color to show that there's an indicator of where that boundary is. I'm going to say boundary, where the boundary is, then that may help kind of alleviate like, where are we with the circle and how much further do I have before I start being counted out of bounds? What about the area outside the circle? There is an area outside the battle boundaries that we call the buffer, where you are told you are leaving the fight and have enough time and space to turn your ship around. This is necessary to not have an immediate punishing hard edge where the hourglass blows your ship up, and to ensure if you're a solo and die, you at least have a chance to get back from the ferry and save your ship. With the new shrinking zones, Rare plans to add a gradual slowdown effect when traversing into the buffer zone. This means that if it is less beneficial to run into this area, although you are already disadvantaged by the desaturation effect, this cuts off the last potential potential remaining way to run. It will also give you more of a chance to save your ship if you die whilst heading for it, or an enemy commands the wheel. What happens to double demasting? We totally get it that there are some satisfying great battles where two ships are double demasted. The alliteration in this post I did not remember, and that it feels like a cool part of Hourglass. However, in prioritizing the improvement of the flow and the pace of the mode for everyone, this will inevitably change some scenarios. That doesn't mean that doesn't mean they necessarily change for the worse though. Okay, there we go. Double demasting is in the final zone is completely unchanged. Once you reach the final circle, there are no more shrinks. So you can still play out this scenario. I'm actually going to pause there and say that if they're assuming that ships will always be demasted towards the center of the zone, that's an oversight in my mind. But I'm assuming that they've already thought of that. They're just speaking to the best case scenario in this case, instead of the assumption that two ships are going to be demasted towards the edge away from the center, and that whoever happens to be on the outside of the circle will inevitably lose first, as they are both demasted. And unless they sink, there's a good chance that whoever's on the outside of the circle will probably kind of like, they'll lose first effectively. Getting back to the post here, they say, this should add more variety, strategy, and tactics to the match, refreshing your experience so it doesn't play out the same way every time. Having special rules around when the zone shrinks or doesn't dependent on preferable play styles adds more complexity and confusion to Hourglass. It's a weird way of saying that. The rules are intuitive right now and allow players to use their own tactics to tackle the match as they see fit. I feel like there should be a little asterisk there. That asterisk should probably say, as long as you aren't beaching yourself in an island area, because that is technically something you can do. It's just not the intended way of playing, which means that it's tackling the match the way you see fit, as long as it falls within what Rare says is the way to tackle it. Why aren't stocks just equalized? So the answer here, and this is in reference to how they're going to be trying to give you a base amount of stock when you go into ships fights now. So they said, we did consider a flat amount of supplies for both ships, but ultimately felt that this removes stories and gameplay from Hourglass. And when they're talking about that, they're talking about moments that were where the tide turned because of curse balls or oh gosh, what are they called? I can't think of what they're called. Chain shot and bone collars, stuff like that, where you have another means of using ammunition that your opponent may not have. That's what they're talking about here. They say Hourglass isn't a separate mode. It exists in adventure as part of our shared world. Players can seemingly go between the two. Equalizing stocks feels by the books fair, but removes any crew effort, luck, or stories. I'll be honest there that when you are making a competitive game, you want to remove elements where things are by luck. The player should be able to play, at least in my personal opinion, players should be able to use skill as their way of being victorious. Like, it should be as close to 50% as possible, which I think it is at this moment, because they're basing it off of the MMR that is in the system. It's a hidden system within the Hourglass. But the crew effort, if you equalize the stocks or the ship supplies, I'm going to say supplies. I don't know why stocks doesn't sound right. When you equalize the supplies, it's just how things were in Arena. One of the things that Arena people learned was that when you go into Arena, you immediately scuttle after you've gathered the best supplies like chain shots and stuff. And the reason for that is because when you scuttled, you would get a brand new ship. You wouldn't lose any points because you hadn't earned anything at the beginning. But when you came back, you had full pockets of supplies and a fresh set of supplies at the beginning of the match. And it was a pretty good tactic. The problem is that it then took away the flat amount of supplies for all ships in Arena, which then kind of made it one of those things like, how do you address that? And how do you ensure that everyone still has the same amount of supplies? In this instance, I understand like what they're going from, because Hourglass is just not diving to fights. There's the mode where you can actually defend on a server, which means you can set up the match however you want. You're going to be sailing around with treasure on board or just waiting for someone to dive to you, and then you address that in the world naturally. When you take that into account, you can't really normalize the supplies, which makes sense, because then you'd either be taking away from people that have gathered stuff who may not necessarily intend for it during the fight, but just want to have it in general for something else. So they go on to say, taking down a ship to find they had a jackpot of chain shots feels Sea of Thieves. Finding a bunch of supplies in adventure, then deciding what you want to dive to Hourglass just feels to them like Sea of Thieves. And I agree. It's inevitable that when you are playing in Hourglass, you're going to run into a crew that just has a ton of supplies, and then you're set. You don't have to worry about it. And then as fate has it, inevitably you will get taken down and you will lose those supplies. Rarely do I think people last too long after they've gotten a whole bunch of supplies. And I don't necessarily know why. That always feels to be the case, but it is something that it feels like if you make a good play and you win and you get a bunch of supplies, you are probably going to lose really soon. I don't know why that is. So let's see. Going into the next one. What is the stock threshold doing? Okay, so the supply threshold. If you have more than the threshold of a specific item, the crate won't contain that item. But if you get everything, but you still get everything else. Okay, so this is in reference to the crate that you get, which would have plenty of supplies in it, that when you go to dive, that's what you'll actually get. So you'll make sure that you have at least a good amount of stock as a result. So they say the threshold is there to enable us to give plenty of items in the crate without it having an undesirable compounding effect after a few wins where players have huge amounts of supplies without having gathered them. Having high supplies in the crate with a reasonable high threshold makes sense to achieve this. Currently, you should be able to dive and win quickly and still get another supply crate. If you win very quickly again, you will start to see some of the items not restocked. We took this broad approach, but then simplified the numbers to round them out and ensure that all ships have the same thresholds in order to make it easier to learn. And they say experimentally, you should feel like you always have enough supplies to compete, but additional ones that you have gathered can still be meaningful and useful, especially of special types like chain shots. So I get that. They don't want to just have people with tons and tons of some of the really good battle ammo types, things like that. If you're diving and winning, it's just a kind of a what is it, like rolling downhill, like a snowballing effect. There we go. It's a snowball effect that they're trying to mitigate by just giving people who already have a bunch of supplies like chain shots even more just because they are winning with those. And I think that does have to be addressed, even if it does feel a little counter to why not just equalize the stocks in that case. This sounds like that is kind of doing that. Next up, the next question was, what is the approach to chain shots and special items? And they responded, the approach to supplies was not to make all resources gathering obsolete, but to stop gathering being a necessity. The combination of starting supplies, the crate, the shrinking zones all together ensures that crews can be competitive even from a fresh start. Base items like cannonballs, wood, and food are relatively obsolete. You generally won't really benefit by gathering any more than you are given when combined with the shrinking zone to bring matches to a close sooner. Special ammo types are a bit different. Here we wanted to give players enough to compete, but not so much that skill becomes meaningless. I'll be honest, I think that there is some merit to that. Like if you have so many chain shot that it doesn't matter how bad you are on cannons, you will inevitably knock down the masts. But I do think that you do have to have some skill. But I think that the MMR takes care of that as well. Chain shots and other special ammo types can be incredibly powerful in Hourglass. The approach here was to balance the default supply with the gameplay of the match. We're using chain shots as an example, but this applies to all specials, including like curse balls and stuff like that. This ensures that chain shots don't become so easy to get that they stop requiring as much effort, skill, and nuance to use properly. Chain shots should remain a skilled play, used sparingly by crews in opportune moments. Crews can still go and gather more supplies if they want more chain shots, but they should feel additional rather than strictly necessary. Stocking at an outpost should now feel like a boost to your default specials rather than something that is necessary to become competitive. Players should be able to vote to rematch straight from the tunnel and feel competitive even without interrupting their flow to go to an outpost. It is a careful balance here. You can imagine that if we are overly abundant with these items, the quality of the match could suffer. Items like firebombs, chain shots, and blunderbombs being super abundant at all times for all crews of all skill levels could mean everyone is spamming these items with little regard, leading to the potentially frustrating match where you lose simply by being spammed enough times with these items, as opposed to losing to a crew that genuinely outskilled you. Anyone can still go and gather an abundance of supplies before diving, but it should no longer be critical to do so. I do think that that's good. I think that's a good way to kind of address the ability to still have a lot of special ammo types in Hourglass and be able to use them and not feel like you're going to get flamed by people who are not taking the time to go get those. Because that's the thing in my mind. If you're concerned about going out to get or getting attacked with special ammo types, take some time to go get some. If that is not the way that you want Hourglass to be, then that takes away from what they're in their mind they think is the intent of Hourglass, which is to be a shared world experience that is just a more competitive nature, which again kind of goes back to the idea, how serious are they taking PvP? In this instance, I would say they're taking PvP serious enough to have a fun mode, but not serious enough to try and make it an esport. CSGO, this is not. You want even fair matches, you will have to go to something like Valorant. Not Call of Duty. There's a lot of cheaters in Call of Duty. But you're not going to really win anyone over by saying that everyone should be restricted to not having curses, bone collars, blunder bombs, phantom balls, things like that. Like that is all up to everyone's approach to Hourglass and how they want to go about it. If somebody wants to go farm that stuff and then dive into Hourglass as their handicap, that is something Rare is willing to let them do, which means it's open on the playing field and you have to account for that. If you don't like it, that's tough because that's coming from the devs, and the devs are the ones that are going to make these choices. We can voice our feedback and say whether we think it's fair or not fair, but at the end of the day, they're going to be the ones that are the adjudicators on this. They're going to decide what happens. Next, we've got, why do emissary flags auto raise in Hourglass? I'm not even really going to dive into this one. It's a very easy answer. There's a lot of reputation that is involved with the flag itself, and because of the emissary value. And honestly, like, going in without a flag is just a very rude thing to do. The key points they say is it unlocks Reaper Bones and Athena's Fortune reputation when you complete a battle alongside emissary value. When the Hourglass is cashed out, it awards emissary value, and the gold and reputation are multiplied by your emissary grade. Being an Athena's Fortune emissary also unlocks the ability to cash in Reaper Bones flags, either won in battle or not. And Athena's Fortune won in battle flags are at Athena's Fortune for reputation. This is locked behind emissary status to ensure that players who have not yet reached Pirate Legend do not have an on-demand way to access Legend progress. Something they've been very keen to point out recently is they don't want on-demand ways of getting Pirate Legend progression unless it's the Fort of the Damned, which is a world event, which kind of falls into the gray area there. Let's see. Next one says, what if I want to be a specific emissary? If you already had an emissary flag up, nothing will happen. We only auto raise one to match your faction if you do not have one currently raised, which is then going to go into the next question. What if I want to be a guild emissary? We do not auto raise a guild emissary as default to the match, the faction of the battle that you're going into. And putting guild up may conflict with emissary ledger. You want to progress here. You may want either. However, if you put a guild emissary up and then enter Hourglass, when you lose, you will be able to vote. You'll be able to go vote it up again. If you choose this option, the guild emissary will be auto raised again for you, allowing you to go back to back without returning to an outpost to re-raise. So you want guild emissary, put it up. When you vote to go back into the battle after you lose, it will auto raise the guild emissary, but only the guild emissary. Do you want to fight again? When you lose an Hourglass match, you will now be asked in the tunnel if you want to battle again immediately. If your crew votes to do this, then you will be matched to another match without having to dive up to adventure and re-vote on the Hourglass and War map. If you vote against another battle, you will surface back in adventure as usual. This change, combined with the addition of the supply crate and auto raising of emissary, makes the loop much faster and easier to get back-to-back matches. Let's see. Here's the one that I wanted to get into. This is the thing that I think I've been wanting for a while. So the last section of this that I really wanted to get into deals with something that I think a lot of us have been bothered by with Hourglass. Me especially has been bothered by in Hourglass, and that's addressing why there's just nothing for anyone between level 1 and 100. Now, I'm already going to get on the soapbox and say that I think that you need to be able to have access to the special areas once you've hit level 50, so that you can at least see what you're getting into and start getting an idea of some of the rewards and stuff that you can get into. And just from a lore perspective, it'll be a little bit nicer for those that aren't into PvP to be able to get into those areas to enjoy it. I like what they're doing to an extent with the rewards, because what they're going to be doing is actually adding rewards for each faction on the way to level 100 to kind of ease that you get absolutely nothing until at least 100. this at least kind of says like, okay, you have something to look forward to. So for guardians and for servants, the rewards are going to be the same, but they're going to be per faction themed. So if there's a makeup for guardians, there is a makeup as well for servants at the same level, just respectfully of each faction, right? So guardians and servants both get a war paint makeup at level 10. At level 35, which is quite the jump, I'm going to be honest, to go from 10 to 35. I think that they could have actually, let's see, they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They could have done one every, what is that? Every 15 levels, roughly. I think they could have messed around with it. I think it's a little bit of a jump to go from that, but it looks like they're doing it relatively like kind of light at the beginning and then a little bit heavier towards the end. So at level 10, you get makeup. At level 35, you get an emote, Pledge of Honor, or Pledge of the Chalice. At level 45, you get a Champion of Fortune flag or Champion of Flame flag, which, if I'm being honest, is not much of a reward. At 65, 20 levels later, it's weird. They're going from 10 to 35, which you're looking at 25 level difference there. Then from 35 to 45, which is 10 levels, from an emote to a flag. Then you have to go 20 levels to get the hull, which, granted, a hull at 65, that's fine. I think at 50 you should get access. At 65 you get the hull. At 75, 10 levels later, you get the flag. Why there's such a disparity between the flag and the hull? I think they just want people to earn the hull. That's my thought on this. But at 75 you get the sails, and then at level 90 you get a figurehead. So I think looking at the rewards here and thinking about like what we've got in Sea of Thieves already, I'm not entirely sure. I think that a ship set was, or actually, no, you know what? I take that back. Ship set, fine. Figurehead is kind of questionable because if I recall correctly, you already get a figurehead. And I'm actually gonna jump into the game to see if I can actually take a look and see, because I know that there's like a whole bunch of figureheads that I don't have. I'm not a fan of Hourglass. Don't like the mode. I'll do it for the sake of getting the ghost curse at some point. But it's not something that I actively think like, oh, I can't wait to jump into Hourglass. I'll do commendations to see if I can unlock skeleton bone stuff, but that's about it. So while I'm getting into that, having the spread here, it looks like the makeup, they want you to kind of know like, hey, there's something you can actually get. The emote, kind of a victory at 35. Then you've got a small jump to get the flag. You have to earn the hull, but the hull to the sails is a small jump. And then even a smaller jump is the 15 levels from 75 to 90. After you hit 90, that's all you're going to get up into the curse. The curse will then be at 100, and you can then go and actually get your access to those at level. And to be fair, like anything after 100, there's cosmetics. So, and they're decently spread out from like 100 to 500. And then I think at 500, you're pretty much dead until you get to until you actually get to like 1000, which is wild that there's just nothing there. But after you get to the 115, you will then get the Guardian's Chef's gloves and the Guardian Chef's hat at 125, and then the Guardian Chef's jacket at 135, which, if I'm being honest, does not really sound cool. If you like cooking food, it's going to be cool for you. But for other folks feels less. Feels like it's less there. And I'm kind of, it's so strange to me because looking at the cosmetics that I don't have right now at level 40 of the allegiance level for Guardians, you get the Valiant Guardian figurehead, which I'm like, okay, you get a figurehead. At level 60, you get a better version of that. At level 80, you get a better version of that still. And then finally at level 100, you get the max level of figurehead. And to me, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. It's evenly spread. You've got 20, 40, and I think I might actually have one of these because I'm already like over 20 on the Guardians side of it. I'm just double checking right now because I know it's probably in here somewhere. Yeah, I do. Okay, so there was one at the very beginning, and it was probably level 10 that you get it, and then 20, 40, 60, 80, and then 100 for the max. I've got those with servants, all 5 versions of them, and it works. I think that's fine. But getting another figurehead at level 90, that's an interesting take. It's a very interesting take. I think I would have preferred they go with something that was not just another figurehead. But it remains to be seen how these look. So I can't really speak to why that's the case, if that makes sense. So from 115 or from 115, you get gloves, a hat at 125, and then a jacket at 135. For Reapers, because you get the skeleton curse, and you've already got the skeleton curse at 100, you have a warrior's head, a warrior's lower body, which is the legs part of it, and then a warrior's upper body. Not sure what those are going to look like, obviously, but you will get additional cosmetics. And anyone that's over 135 is going to have access to this right out the gate, which, if I recall, does not include me because I'm at 105 on servants and a whopping 28 on Guardians. And I could not care less if I ever get those, but I am at least happy to know that I have my skeleton curse, because at least now I can work on those commendations that require it. And until rare forces me to get the ghost curse due to commendations, I will probably continue to put off Hourglass. Because if it wasn't for the stupid commendations in the Reaper stuff and the Burning Blade reputation, Adventures at Sea stuff, the Flame Rises and the Reaper Rising, if it wasn't for those, I probably would still not have my skeleton curse, because I genuinely just do not care. But nowadays, I wear my skeleton curse all the flipping time because what was it the other day? I found out that there's a commendation to sink or to destroy ghost ships while wearing your skeleton curse. And then I found out that there's a commendation to complete sea forts while wearing your skeleton curse. And I'm so glad that I was wearing it all the time because I was getting credit for those when I didn't realize I needed credit for those. And it's not a huge fan of that of that system. This whole game is designed around collecting cosmetics, and I feel obligated to genuinely wear my skeleton curse on a regular basis, just so that I don't accidentally miss out on commendations that I can't remember and don't think about checking, because the UI system just does not really do you any favors on keeping track of that stuff. It genuinely does not. In fact, I think it actively works against you. And if they changed locations or values every time I logged in, I wouldn't notice. And I could not prove that it didn't, to be 100% honest. The UI needs an absolute overhaul, but we're not going to get that. We're not going to get that ever. We'll get little things, and the Emporium is going to look amazing all the time. And in fact, the Emporium will always look amazing all the time because it's the only thing that actually generates cash for the game. And as a result, will be the only thing that looks and feels amazing. If you don't believe me, I want you to go boot up the game. And the next time you boot up the game, I want you to tell me if you noticed that Monkey Island is still being promoted as like on the front of the game, on the very start to the game. Whereas if you go to the Pirate Emporium, if you open up the Emporium and you look at the bottom, you'll see this really awesome thing that says Sea of Thieves, The Legend of Monkey Island, Sea of Thieves, A Pirate's Life, and then the free emote, which to me is an indicator that they are trying to sell cosmetics for the two main Tall Tale sets that they released that were independent stories, basically games in their own right, at the beginning of it. But if you go to the front end of the game, when you boot up and you go to play, and it's either like play Sea of Thieves or jump into Monkey Island or do the maiden voyage, and you're sitting there wondering, what about Pirate's Life? Pirate's Life was still a very important update for them and still relatively relevant as it deals with the captain, as an introduction to the captain who's going to be prominent eventually in the game at some point. And yet the Emporium seems to showcase this content equally. Why doesn't the front end have a top little box that says Monkey Island and then a bottom little box that says Pirate's Life? But that is a testament to the slow decay of the UI needing to be completely overhauled, and how the Emporium always gets all the attention and all of the attention. And if you don't, another thing that I was thinking about the other day, I pinned a couple reputations, Bill's Red Adventures and the Hunter's Call, I believe, as well as I think it was Reapers. But I pinned those on my pirate profile so that I could have quick access to them. Then Rare goes and changes the way that the reputation pane and the commendation pane looks, so that you no longer have the seasonal stuff mixed in with the reputations. All of the seasonal stuff has its own tab, and that's where you see the deeds, the season pass, and the events that don't have events in them, unless there's like a Golden Glory or community weekend. Otherwise, there's no daily events. There's no daily things to do. There's no repeating event stuff right now. It's completely calm waters, as they say, on there. But going back to it, I have those pinned reputation panes so that I had quick access to them. You know where the only place you can go to get those is? Front end of the game. When you log into the game, if you go straight to the main game and you want to go check out your pirate profile and you take a look, it shows you the way that the reputations used to look. It shows you it has your 3 little pinned sections, and then it shows you the what's it called? I'm blanking on what it's called. Oh wait, I can just go to it because it's already right here. Well, maybe if if the game wants to, but it shows you the season column, the reputation column, and then the 3 that you have pinned. But if you go into the game and you go to reputation, it just shows you all of them, and there was no point to even pinning them because that's no longer something that is represented in the game. It's only represented in the pirate log on the front end. So UI consistency, it's dead. It does not happen. And while I'm on this high horse, I'm going to be 100% honest. I hate having a second pirate profile, if only because it means that I have a little 1 next to my name on every screenshot that I take that shows the UI. So it no longer just says CaptainLogun. Now it says CaptainLogun parentheses 1. And I can't get rid of it. I don't know how to do anything with it. It's extremely like bothersome in my mind because it's such a little bit of information that I don't care about, because I know who my original pirate was. I know who my second pirate is. I'm not confused by those in any way, and I don't necessarily need an indicator to show me which one I'm on, because each of them looks completely different. I don't have 2 identical looking pirates. I can look at the play screen when I go to high seas and I go to select a ship. I can see in the background when I'm selecting my crew, which pirate is currently represented. And if it's not the pirate I want to play on, spoilers, I don't play on my second one, then I need to go back to pirate and choose that one. I don't want the indicator on my name. It's ugly. It shows me I'm playing a game. Doesn't feel like I'm actually in a world. Man, sorry. That was a tirade. Where was I? Where did I even... Oh, we were talking about rewards for Hourglass, and I got on my high horse. So I apologize if that was frustrating or annoying to you, because I had some victories that I wanted to share real quick. All right, pirates, that's going to do it for this episode. I think that was pretty much everything, and we'll have to see how long this ends up being, because I definitely took some time to take care of Fern. But again, pirates, if you guys like this content, if you appreciate it, definitely let me know in the comment section. If you're watching on YouTube, the likes and subscribes, comments, all that stuff always kind of helps with the algorithm. I do what I can with the tags and the back end stuff to help out, but really engagement is what YouTube's wants. So feed the beast. That's what we got to do. We just got to keep feeding the beast. But again, it's at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter to me. The patrons take care of the bills as far as the actual podcast goes. So thanks to them, as always, for helping support the content each week. And if you guys have any comments, questions, concerns, feel free to leave them either on the YouTube or join up on the Discord. I woke Fern up again. Now she's upset, so I'm going to have to take care of that too. But join the Discord, jump in there, say hi to everyone. We've got insider conversations going on. We've got the weekly Keelhauled champions going on if you're trying to learn how to do Hourglass. I don't participate in that for obvious reasons. She's going crazy now. She wants attention. She might actually start sounding very pathetic. Maybe. Nope, never mind. She went for food. Well, I thought I was going to be able to capture that on audio, but I guess not. You'll just have to wait till next chance. But pirates, that's going to do it for this. Thank you, love you, and look forward to sailing with you on the Sea of Thieves. And before I go, I'm going to be adding some ships to the Patreon guild that have some older cosmetics. So if you happen to see those, I think one is a brig, a bone breaker, and I think the other one is a sloop called the Wild, or Wilds. I can't remember. But I went ahead and took some of the original year one cosmetics and added ships to the guild so that if anyone wants to sail with some cosmetics that you may not have had in the past, you're more than welcome to grab those and join in and start sailing around with some older cosmetics that are always kind of, it's nice to see. You know, H-Chick made a good point that, you know, you never really see these older ones out on the seas anymore. So I figured I'd throw those in the guild if anyone wanted to sail with them and they didn't have them. So keep an eye out for that if you're part of the Patreon. I think we still have a couple spots open on the main guild as well too. And I think we're on 6 or 7. I can't remember. Rank 6 or 7, quotation marks. Anyway, pirates, that's going to do it. So I'll talk to you all later. Have a good one, and we'll see you all next week.